Erica, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, good to see you. Thank you for having me on.
All great, all good. And I Ben wanted to talk to you because you announced that you're very close to launching your book, Crypto Wars, which you were very nice to send me the a pre-version of it to get acquainted with it. It's great. It like really shows that you did your research. I mean, the what the references list is like almost as long as the book itself. Very
Yes.
factual book. Looks that you put a lot of your work into it. But before talking about the book, would you like talking about the Crypto Curry Club, which like you're in full attire of today?
Yeah, so no, thank you very much for having me on. Yeah, so the Crypto Curry Club, it's the biggest and the main crypto community in the UK. So we started that 3 years ago, just to get people together in the crypto space, and it grew and grew and grew and grew. So we hosted until lockdown. We had a lot of in-person events. So curry is the most popular food in the UK. So we had a lot of different events where we got people together for lunch and dinner, just whole roomfuls of people that are working in the crypto space. So founders of the main companies and people working in tech and innovation and payments and crypto and blockchain from companies, from startups to the biggest companies in the world, just all got together to talk about the biggest themes in crypto and to share food and drinks until lockdown. We've also got a weekly publication, the Crypto Courier, just giving the biggest news and events and stories from crypto and blockchain of the week for free to everyone who subscribes, and the monthly publication, Blockchain Industry Review.
Yeah, as soon as I connected with you on LinkedIn, I connected with you thanks to the book, because someone who was been on the podcast before liked your post about it. That's how I heard about it for the first
Nice.
time. And then like I got researching, and it's one of those things where it seems like it was there the whole time. Like now I couldn't unsee the Crypto Curry Club. And also I found out that the next guest on this podcast, like the Panther Protocol, was just featured in your latest issue.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah. It's a small world.
it's a small crypto world. So yeah, how did you decide to go on to write a book then?
So the book was the publisher's idea. I can take no credit for that. They reached out to me just before lockdown, with the idea for it, to do a book about the biggest sort of scams and hacks in crypto, and asked if I wanted to do it. And I just thought it would be such a fun idea. I thought it would be really interesting to research. Um, and I was slightly naive by how much work it would take to write a book.
Yeah.
I totally and utterly underestimated that, but anyhow, one learns. But we'd hosted previously, so there's a podcast in the UK that was very popular. It was called The Missing Crypto Queen. It was done by the BBC, and it was about the OneCoin scam. So that's now thought to be the biggest scam in crypto. I think they've taken about $25 billion worth from people, and it's a huge Ponzi scam that's affected people all around the world. And the BBC did this podcast series about it. I don't know if you know it, but I was sent a link to that podcast at the end of 2019, and it's just a phenomenally well done show. They researched this scam, and they're looking for the woman who founded it, and she's been missing and disappeared and has been hunted down by the FBI since 2017. And there was all these sort of parts of the story that just kept revealing themselves in this podcast about, that they've tracked down the founders. It was this whole multi-level marketing sort of style scam, but the woman had found out that the FBI were after her and disappeared, and they were tracking down where she was. And so I listened to this podcast, and I was just absolutely hooked. It's so well done. So I sent a message to the guy. He's called Jamie Bartlett, the guy who, the sort of the host of the podcast, the main guy who'd been driving it, doing all of the research. And I assumed he's so busy and he's so in demand, and I thought there's no way he'd be willing to speak at one of my events. But I sent him a cheeky message if he would be willing perhaps to speak at one of our Crypto Curry Club events. And by then we had the main crypto community in the UK, and he said yes, so he'd be happy to. So he came to one of our Crypto Curry Club events, and we had this sort of private room full. We had a restaurant full, and took over the space, and had about 60 people from all of the main crypto companies, and people that had been in crypto from, you know, in many cases from the early days, coming to listen to Jamie, and he told us some of the most incredible stories sort of from behind the scenes of the OneCoin scam. And then what was interesting from that event, because you've got in crypto, from especially from the earlier days, there's been so many scams and so many crimes and so many hacks and all of this. And what was interesting at that event and after that event, because we'd hosted Jamie and had this big talk all about the OneCoin and all about the big scam, quite a few people who had been in crypto sort of from the earliest days, sort of since early after Bitcoin was created in 2009, came forward to tell me about other scams that they knew about and that they'd sort of watched unfold, and that they'd in some cases tried to expose and tried to warn people about. And you know, some of these people had death threats and had real sort of threats by the scams, and by, in some cases, by mafia, by organized crime, for their attempts to expose these scams. And you know, that was just absolutely incredible. You don't realize how bad the situation is until you sort of hear firsthand these accounts of people that have, you know, in person had these death threats of trying to warn other people about these scams. And so I'd been sort of researching into it, and then I was invited to join. So what happens with some of the main crypto scams? They use this tactic called multi-level marketing. So it's a marketing tactic that's more or less legal in some cases in some countries. And, you know, it's basically pyramid scheme selling of things where people get these big commissions for bringing other people into the scam. But the main scams, they're really good at marketing. They have the best people for marketing. And they have these Facebook groups, and they've got these groups on social media, but publicly there on Facebook, where you've got the scam promoting itself, promoting the scam and asking how can they buy these coins and how can they get involved, and you know, people even trying to scam each other publicly on these Facebook groups. So from sort of hosting Jamie, I was sort of brought into this world where I was getting invited to join these Facebook groups and these sort of groups on social media run by these scams, or run by the sort of the fans and the supporters of these scams, just to watch what was going on, to see what was actually really happening in the background. And so, you know,
Did the reality start getting a little bit blurry when you were doing
it
that?
was absolutely crazy. You know, it's really crazy. And you know, there's some of these scams are referred to as cults, and it really is like that. You see people
Referred to as what, sorry?
as cults. So you know, like a religious cult where you've got people
Yeah.
utterly led, and it's really like that. And you know, because people invest and then they're brainwashed, and the scams, you know, what is important to note is that the scams have such good marketing, and they hire the absolute best people in marketing and multi-level marketing and in content, in sort of brainwashing. So they really brainwash these people, and then you've got people who sort of fall for them, but because they've fallen for them, and because of the way that the sort of the multi-level marketing structure works, that they're incentivized, they're paid money every time they bring someone else on. So you've got people who are bringing in their friends, their families, their communities, their religious communities and everything to invest in the scam, so that, you know, if these people found out that it was a scam, by that point it was too late, because they've already not only themselves invested their own money, but invested their friends' money and their family's money, and got so many people that they knew to invest. So they didn't want to see that it was a scam.
Even your legal
Really
multi-level
defend, really
marketing.
loyal to the scam.
Yeah, so, sorry, like like I always say, it's impossible not to cut people off when you're talking on Zoom. But yeah, even your legal multi-level marketing stuff, like even the regular multi-level marketing companies like Unilever and Tupperware or whatever, they're a bit cultish, right? Like they behave in the same way that people saw that BitConnect guy behave in
Right.
their
So I mean,
conferences.
yeah, there's a number. I mean, I heard somewhere, and I'm sure there are. Okay, I'm not sure. It's possible there are multi-level marketing companies that have good intentions and do well for people. But the statistic I heard is that on average with multi-level marketing, 98% of people who get involved lose money. And you know, because they operate on the same pyramid structure. So people right at the top that do well and do really well, and then 98% of people lose money, because there's no one left to sell to. So even, you're right, I watched this documentary about multi-level marketing companies in the I forgot the name of it. It's this like sort of herbal oils, these sort of natural oils that are used to treat various things. And I don't know if they work. Maybe they work, it's possible. But you've got these multi-level marketing companies, and you see the shows and the conferences and the events they put on, and it's like a big sort of stage show. It's like a big party, not work.
And they target college kids, like that's the crowd that they're trying to onboard. 18-year-old kids, 20-year-old kids that are like impressionable and think they're starting their own business, and it goes like it goes a bit sick down the line, man. And I remember like my first job in crypto, it was for a marketing agency, an ICO marketing agency. And this is what they would do. Like they would bring people that had no clue about the space and get them acquainted with all these shams and all these scams and all these things, and talk to you as if they were totally legit and build these huge marketing teams with huge spending budgets. And I mean, it was profitable.
Right, for sure. But it just goes to show sort of how much marketing and how much sort of that cult life sort of following is part of these scams. So you asked, I mean, this is a long-winded answer to the question, but you asked how I got into sort of writing this book. That the publisher approached me with this idea, but by that time we'd hosted that event with Jamie about 4 months before they approached me, or 3 or 4 months before they approached me. So I'd had 3 months of sort of being absorbed in this world of watching these sort of scams, literally scamming people publicly on social media. So it's just a fascinating space.
And you even see the more rational communities, or the communities for the coins that actually make sense and are legit, all that. Like even Ethereum gets a bit cultish at times. Even Cardano gets a bit cultish at times. Like you would see the way they trick Vitalik on stage, and I don't think he himself is even comfortable with it at some point, right?
I think, I mean, that is actually what I see as being one of the problems in sort of the crypto space, because you're totally right. You spend some time with some of the Ethereum maximalists and whatever, and as far as they're concerned, Ethereum is basically God. Everything else is a scam. Everything else is, what they deem to be a shitcoin. And, the dollar is a scam. Everything else is bad. And then you've got the same with some of the Bitcoin maximalists, that everything else is a scam. And then you've got the same, you've got people who get into altcoins and say, well, everything else is a scam. And that is what I see as one of the problems in the space, calling everything else a scam. Because when you've got these groups calling the dollar a scam, now I'm not necessarily advocating that the dollar is infallible against Bitcoin. I think the charts show it's gone down like 97% or something in value, and I think it's fair to say that governments have learnt how to print money, and that inflation is a real thing, and that governments sort of seem to print money like it's going out of fashion these days. So it's not that the dollar is perfect, but calling the dollar a scam doesn't help. Bitcoin isn't perfect, but calling Bitcoin a scam doesn't help. Ethereum isn't perfect, but calling Ethereum a scam doesn't help, because then what you see is that when there are actual scams, where the intention is purely to scam people, when people try and warn people and say, well, this is a scam, they don't believe it and they don't listen, because it's the boy who cried wolf. All they've heard is that everything else is a scam. So they think it's just another person criticizing the project, or jealous that they didn't get in early enough, or whatever. So, I do think that is a problem, sort of by calling everything else a scam. When there is a real scam, people don't listen when people try and warn them from investing in that, and then they end up losing their money.
I mean, by now, I work at a research firm, at a crypto research firm. This is the podcast of a crypto research firm, although they let me be quite unserious in here. And it's funny because we advise institutions, like we give them reports on factual information on what are good projects to enter to, and we do all of our due diligence, and we do all of our proper research the way
Yeah.
we reckon it should be done. Look at jurisdictions, look at legal teams, everything. And then it's sad that you have to justify, yeah, like we're giving you all the seriousness in a report here so you know what to invest on, but
Yeah.
also Dogecoin is the best performing asset of the year.
I know, yeah. And I mean, it goes to show, that it's one thing calling projects a scam, but the entire crypto market is so heavily manipulated, and nobody can dispute how sort of messy the market is. And we don't need to name names, but there are even celebrities and influencers who've been slapped on the wrist, who've been fined, who've been arrested, and others who get away scot-free from just utterly manipulating the markets. And you've got celebrities and influencers, who often own crypto, so they're directly financially motivated to influence markets. And there's people who with just one tweet can make prices sort of go up or crash by billions of dollars just in one tweet. And it does go to show how sort of volatile the markets are and how easily they are to manipulate and to influence.
Wasn't Kim Kardashian promoting an Ether Max scam like last week or something like that?
I didn't hear about that. I can't comment. I don't know about that. But there have been several celebrities and several, especially now with the rise of TikTok, where anybody can just do anything with no sort of without stop. And you've got some of these people on TikTok have hundreds of thousands of millions of followers, and there's been several people, either influencers with hundreds of thousands of millions of followers in the public eye, just promoting, either promoting coins, which cryptocurrencies, which might not be as scams, but they're still manipulating the market because they've got enough effort. And there's been others that have literally promoted scams and just haven't seemed to do the 2 minutes of due diligence that would have been required to find out that there's something not quite great about their project.
And there's no other place on earth where you would like openly see people promoting Ponzi schemes, right?
I think not quite as openly. And because crypto hasn't been regulated, I think the tendency has been to think that one can get away with doing whatever one wants. But the scams seem to just be so brazen and so confident. And, they make up all of these crazy claims and all of these crazy stories, and they'll lie about who's on the team, they'll lie about what partnerships they've got, they'll lie about what customers they've got, they'll lie about if they're regulated or not, they'll lie about that they're going to be listed on sort of national stock exchanges. They'll make up all of these claims that are just total lies. There's not even a shred of truth to them, and they just seem to get away with it. And that's been the same with sort of manipulating the crypto markets. Because it's crypto, people have sort of at least thought they'll get away with it, whereas other markets, as there have been more sort of clampdowns, and it's changing now with crypto, but not perhaps as quickly as might be ideal.
And then some of the lies even like manifest into reality, because last week we saw Coinbase list Shiba Inu, and it's like, right. Okay, are you seriously gonna take this into like the listings of a privately listed company? Like how far does it get, especially with meme coins, which are a bit of a rabbit hole on themselves?
Yeah, although one could argue that they're probably not jokes or not scams so much as just I don't know, a bit of fun that's made some people a lot of money, maybe.
Okay, Erica, I'm gonna send quickly to a message from our sponsors for everyone listening to this. This is the only commercial break that we'll see. This is a 30-second thing, so take it as a chance to drink some water, tell friends that you love them, and maybe leave us a comment about your favorite scam. And we'll be right back. The Blockchain People podcast is brought to you by Coin Payments, the world's first and leading crypto payment processor. Coin Payments serves over 70,000 merchants in over 200 nations with industry-low fees since 2013. The Coin Payments wallet lets users hold over 2,000 different cryptocurrencies, which is why they're used by giants such as NordVPN and Binance. Whether you're a merchant or an individual looking to get paid in crypto, coin payments could be just what you need. And we're back. Erica, so one thing that was on my mind while you were going through all of these is the fact that this is a bit of something that's constantly happening. And you mentioned how much work the book was. So are you afraid that you're going to have to re-edit it like next week?
I hope not. No, I hope not. I hope not. We did a few edits. We did a number of edits, including a legal edit. So I hope not. People are already asking about volume 2. So we shall see.
And because a couple of things, like you mentioned OneCoin, and it's a bit of ancient history by now, right? Like just by the fact that everything moves so fast. I would reckon also, I would reckon some people in the crypto community might take it as an offense that someone from within the community is pushing a book that could be seen as FUD. So what's your reaction to that? Don't care?
A couple, do you know, 99% of people have been really, really positive, really supportive, you know, thinking this is really cool, this is exciting, it's exciting to hear the other side of crypto. And, you know, I think people are realistic that, you know, there are these scams in crypto, and there's so much talk about all the good side. But, you know, I think that a couple people have said that there's enough sort of FUD and negativity around crypto, but that's sort of missing the point that the negativity does still exist. And, you know, I hope with this book, I have a few hopes. Firstly, that, you know, a lot of people in crypto, I'd never heard about OneCoin until somebody sent it to me at the end of 2019. Just never heard about it. And, you know, a lot of people in crypto just don't know that these scams exist, or if they know, they don't know the extent of it, they don't know how bad they are. So I'm hoping partly that it will just inform sort of people about, you know, a more balanced side of the space. I think quite publicly not anti-crypto. I'm quite sort of publicly pro-crypto. The last chapter is sort of goes on to show some of the real life actual use cases of crypto. But I do think it is important to show how bad, you know, it is in some cases, how these scams get so big, so bad, how the markets get so manipulated. And then on the other side, you know, the reality is you've still got millions of people falling for these scams every year, and the scams aren't going away. They're getting worse, and they're getting more sophisticated. They're getting smarter. That the people running the scams are going from scam to scam to scam to scam, and are getting more knowledge, more intelligence, more, you know, better software. So the ability to scam people for the scammers is now probably 100 times easier than it was a few years ago. If you look at sort of some of the scams a few years ago, you know, in some of the cases, it was quite obvious that there was something wrong, or that they were a scam, or that they were a Ponzi scheme. But now the scams are getting so good. You know, I have the most intelligent people writing to me, people that are, you know, senior positions in other roles, saying that they've been scammed, because it's so hard sometimes to know what's a scam and what's not real. So I guess my main hope is that people will read it, and yes, we'll have a bit of fun and we'll enjoy reading it, but also we'll know a lot more about how the scams and sort of the problems work, so that they'll at least be more cautious and maybe know more that they don't themselves fall for the scams. So a couple people have said that, but, you know, overwhelmingly it's been positive, and I think overwhelmingly people think it's a fun read, and also hopefully informative to help prevent people falling for the scams.
I mean, Mark Cuban got rug pulled the other day, right? Like they managed to pull the rug like from below one of the most popular investors in pop culture and in our world.
And, you know, it happens, and, you know, people think it's only other people that get scammed, but it's really not. You know, I know so many people that have lost, or you know, or not know, or people have reached out who've lost, you know, money, or fallen for these scams, or been hacked themselves, or had their crypto stolen themselves, or whatever that is. And I mean, I guess the other point is, you know, recently, especially since coronavirus and since lockdown, all scams have gotten worse. cybercrime has gotten worse, ransomware has gotten worse, all sorts of scams have gotten worse on Facebook, on Twitter, on email scams, on phone call scams. Every type of scam has gotten so much worse since we're in lockdown, because people are at home more, they're more vulnerable because of the economic situation. Most people have lost a lot of money in the last year and a half, so people are more vulnerable. So I think it is worth drawing people's attention to the to the state of the problem and to some of the types of scams, because more people than ever are falling for them now.
And yeah, you're right. Like even the Prince of Nigeria is stuck at home these days. He has to send some emails and offer people his gold.
Right, yeah, and there's a lot of people, and I often get emails from people who've inherited lots of money and wish to donate it to me and whatever, and scam call from BT or HMRC or whatever it is, trying to separate them from their money. So the scams happen every day.
Are you aware of the whole Bitcoin was created by Paul Leroux narrative?
I haven't heard that one. I've heard a few. I've heard the CIA one. I've heard the Craig Wright one. I've heard a few. I haven't heard Paul Leroux. Who's Paul Leroux?
Well, speaking about, speaking about scams, Craig Wright. Anyways, let's not get sued and not talk about Craig Wright. But if we have to look at the way that the Satoshi Nakamoto theories have been like thrown around, one that stands out and one that's very interesting is that the theory that Bitcoin was created by Paul Leroux, which was basically this huge cyber criminal Bitcoin, drugs and arms dealer. He was also very interested in Bitcoin from the very start. And this is basically a dude that developed some very interesting encryption tools that were used and even recognized by the official, let's say it's Satoshi in the internet forums. And this guy, Evan Ratliff, he went on to write a whole book about his life and how he got so big and how he started like sending spam emails, selling Viagra. Remember the Viagra spam emails back in the day? And then he just...
No, I don't think I ever received those.
I think those were targeted at men.
Okay.
And but they were like one of the earliest internet memes. Like every time you would get like an email trying to sell you Viagra, and apparently this same dude was behind that, and he used that to start building his own version of like the first internet mafia to sell like prescription drugs online, obviously illegally.
Right.
That then went on to move to the black markets, that then went on to scale up to the point where he was like selling missiles to the Iranian government. We have an episode on that, so check that one out. Definitely.
I'd love to listen. Yeah.
And that's Evan's theory, that this same guy was the guy behind Bitcoin, because he was so utterly crazy but also super intelligent. And you would imagine what the fallout would be if that would turn out to be true.
I find that slightly hard to imagine. I think, if you look and, who knows ultimately, but Satoshi has, I think it's 1 million Bitcoin that just haven't moved since its creation. You kind of feel if someone's willing to sell fake drugs and sell missiles to a government, that they're probably more motivated by money or by fame or by glory or something. Whereas Satoshi hasn't revealed themselves and hasn't taken any of the money.
I mean, but that was part of the...
because the real Satoshi got killed off, who knows? But
No, but that's part of the theory as well. Like Satoshi disappears at just about the same time where WikiLeaks started taking Bitcoin payments or Bitcoin donations, and the theory is that this guy was just like, okay, I'm out. I don't want the government to track this back to me. So that's the same time where this guy that's already wealthy and that has just like a couple millions of Bitcoin, that's nothing compared to his fortune, disappears. And then he goes to jail. So yeah, I mean, the theory matches up at some points. That's a very interesting one.
I'll have a listen. I haven't heard that one.
I think you'd be interested.
I guess on Satoshi Nakamoto, who knows? I'm certainly not smart enough or know enough to know. My estimation would be, and I might be totally wrong, I think if you look at, law enforcement bodies like the CIA or whatever, I mean, I would be confident that they have the resources to have worked it out, to have tracked it down, to put enough sort of brain power or whatever it is to track down. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's known by governments or by the CIA or whatever exactly who Satoshi is, and they've done some sort of, either taken him out or done some sort of deal to keep Satoshi quiet, to sort of keep world peace, or to be able to track Bitcoin, or who knows. That would be my guess. I might be wrong.
I wanted to also to mention Paul LaRue, because that's a great episode. You should definitely listen to it.
I will do.
To use it as an introduction, because you also talk about like a very special character in your book, a rogue of sorts that passed away this week. We're talking about John McAfee, and
right.
you devote quite a bit of space to John McAfee. I mean, deservedly. Like if this is a book that John McAfee is supposed to be on, this is the book. The Crypto Wars is the book. So, I mean, are you planning on adding something about his untimely death in the book?
I'm not going to change the book now. I think there's a sentence somewhere, I think it's in the introduction, and where we say that everything in crypto changes so crazy fast, so fast, just constantly, that there's no way you can ever catch up with everything that's happening. And if you change this, and you're going back every day to make another edit, because things in crypto change so fast. So no, we won't be editing it. We'll leave that to the reader to research. But yeah, he the fact that he died, is interesting. And we had a whole debate in our Crypto Carry Club WhatsApp group, whereby some people think he committed suicide, and probably 90% of people in crypto seem to think that he was taken out. Again, we'll probably never know. But he really had a huge impact on that time, sort of in around the ICO era, where he was just pumping and dumping coins, and again, just he worked out that if you could just send a tweet, how much that can manipulate markets. And it did. You watch people just running to sort of, the minute a tweet was tweeted, that would rush to buy that coin, or would set bots to sort of follow his tweets, and then would auto buy. And some people did well, lots of people lost money, but it hugely manipulated markets. And there's still so many cryptocurrencies now where you can look back at the charts, and you see whatever it was, steady, and then there's just an instant needle where his tweet just pushed the price of something up by hundreds of percent, instantaneously, and then it crashed again. So there was huge manipulations of the markets going on there.
And I mean, just as a caveat here, because that's something that you said in the introduction, and I don't think we drove it across as much as we should have. Yeah, for every person that you see that made money with one of these scam coins or one of these things, there are likely 99 that lost money because of them, right?
Exactly. Because the first ones, the smartest ones, the ones that have the most ability to have the best bots and to get in earliest and all of that, they already did well. And often, especially with the pump and dumps, the people who ran the groups, ran the pump and dumps, did the best of all. And that sometimes included influencers who are running sort of these pump and dumps, publicly from YouTube, by getting people to buy what they said. And because the first people that got in, they got in before they told anyone else about it, and then they pumped it and so forth. So exactly that. The vast majority of people lost money, I think, and a few people did exceptionally well.
And when it comes to John McAfee, do you have a theory there? Do you think he killed himself? Do you think he was taken out?
Judging on the collective, assumption. We had this debate on our group. About 90% of people in crypto seem to think that he was taken out. That seems to be the general consensus. I don't know. I don't imagine we'll ever know. One can see it both ways. He's going to be extradited to America. He's going to face life in prison. That's going to be pretty miserable. And if you've already been in prison, I imagine that's not easy. So there's probably motivations to kill yourself. But then also that he does know a lot, and he probably has generated enemies, and he probably does know more than he let on. So, there's probably also motivations to take him out. I don't know. I don't really want to be the one to put a guess on that. I don't imagine it will ever come out.
I mean, with people like John McAfee, you would think that they sort of like live life in their own terms, and it would make sense for them to sort of try and take their own life in their own terms rather than die in prison, right?
Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? I think with some of these things, you just cannot imagine what's going on in people's heads. And I read a beautifully written obituary about him by a guy who's in the Cryptocurrency Club, a friend, Darren Parkin. He's the editor at City M, and he wrote a beautiful obituary about John McAfee, about how he'd had a really hard childhood and been abused as a child, and his father had drank a lot, and how he'd been led to sort of drinking drugs at an early age. And it's hard to know what's going on in someone's life, but it's not like the guy had an easy life from being a child. So who knows?
He was also a great piano player. Like, you would see his tweets of him playing the piano.
I didn't know that. Well, that's a skill. I certainly can't play the piano, so that's a kudos to him.
Yeah, like you would see these videos of him that he would tweet out, and he's playing the piano, and he's great, man. Like, you would think like there was definitely a future there if he would want to have pursued.
Had he wanted to be a professional piano player? Interesting.
Although I reckon like he wouldn't change the living in international waters for that.
Maybe. Well, apparently the last is at the end. He was living on a Spanish mining farm. So who knows?
I wanted to ask you as well. There is I mean, there's a chapter in your book about how these scams got to be so big. There's also a lot about how to prevent oneself from being a victim of a scam. So yeah, I'm going to put you in the spotlight here and ask you, if you would have to run a scam, how would you make sure that it goes over people's head that this is a scam?
Gosh, if I had to run a scam, I mean, ideally the life goal isn't to run a crypto scam. But I mean, the ones that, I mean, I'll make it clear, my intention isn't to start a crypto scam. I think life's hard enough as it is. But the ones that you see that have really gone big, like OneCoin, like BitConnect, there's been quite a few others. The ones that have gone the biggest have all, and you still see them going on today. It's not like they've stopped. You still see these starting and happening today. The ones that have got the biggest have all used multi-level marketing, and they've brought in sort of teams of the most experienced, the best, most persuasive sort of multi-level marketing guys who, in some cases they boast about making like 100 million a year or something in commissions just from selling these sort of multi-level marketing scam packages in crypto. So the biggest scams as a theme have all used this multi-level marketing structure, whereby it's a pyramid. The people who get in first get the most money, because everybody they bring in, they get a share of that, and then if they bring in other people, they get a share of that, and so forth. So what you have with these sort of multi-level marketing schemes is that it's not just the scammers selling the scam. It's people who get in early. Often, they have the sort of the teams of the scammers and the teams of the multi-level marketers. But then you've also got normal people who get in early, who've fallen for the scam, and they themselves are victim. But the scams early on pay out. So the first people to get in, they invest their money, but then they get their money back because they want to make it look like it's all good. So what you then have is ordinary people falling for them, and then they say to their friends and to their families and to their communities and so forth to also invest because they think it's good and they think it's innocent. So then you've got scams sort of pass on through people recommending it to their friends and their families and so forth because they think that it's good because early on it was. So that's, that's how they've got so big. And I think, if you look at the likes of, say, OneCoin, just as an example, I mean, this is just what I've heard from Jamie Bartlett, who's done far more research into it, than I ever could for the Missing Crypto Queen series. And, he says he thinks that the OneCoin scam, just as an example, got so totally bigger than they ever expected and just got totally out of control. And it just got worse than they expected because it sort of spread internationally. And then you had people going around their villages and their communities and so forth to bring other people in. Of course, because every person they brought in, they got commission for, so it was worthwhile. But it just spread and spread and spread and spread. So what you've got now with the OneCoin scam is that the sort of FBI and the law enforcement got on top of that years ago. It was sort of shut down 2017. Since then, you've had the FBI hunting down the founder. You've had people being arrested. You've now got, the founders and the lawyer of the OneCoin scam have been in either tried or wanted or in prison or whatever for years now. So it's been almost 4 years that people know that this is a scam. They're hunting down Dr. Reja, the founder, but you've got people in prison for life for this. And that yet, if you go onto LinkedIn, for example, and type in OneCoin, you can see just from what I can see from, because I don't think LinkedIn shows you every single person, but I could see over 100 people still actively selling OneCoin, and reports are that there's still people
would you mind
saying it's good.
Would you mind if I go into LinkedIn right now and
Do
take a
it,
look
do
at that?
it, do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, we're doing
Type
this live.
in OneCoin.
But definitely, we're doing this live.
I'd
But
be
please
interested.
continue
Maybe
with
it
what you were
shows you.
saying.
And there's still people defending it. There's still people who don't think it's a scam. There's still people buying in, and it's still going on. And it just shows how big and how out of hand it got. And then you've got people just jumping from scam to scam to scam to scam. So it shows how much sort of worse these scams are getting, because everyone that's learned experience on how to scam people from OneCoin is now going to other scams.
How do you reckon I should go about this? I mean, I'm seeing quite a couple of interviews with you here, so your name is forever associated with OneCoin. Yeah.
So if you go, if you look at people, so
okay,
if you type in people, because people.
Okay, people.
Because then that will be people who've got OneCoin on their profile, and then if you actually look at those profiles, you'll see that there's many people still actively promoting it on their LinkedIn's.
There are groups. There are groups like OneCoin Morocco.
Wow, are they still active?
It looks like I'm seeing this one dude that like he's got listed OneCoin miner as his like primary employment source. I'm not screen sharing, so like my screen is not going to show in the video, so we're not exposing anyone.
And anybody who wants to check can search people on LinkedIn and type in OneCoin, and you'll probably get an idea. But it just shows how bad the problem still is. And if you go onto Facebook and to social media, that you've got all of these groups run by every different sort of type of scam.
Interesting, man. There's quite a couple in Argentina here. I might infiltrate the OneCoin community since I'm already here.
The OneCoin in Argentina.
Yeah, there are quite a bit.
Do they have live events there?
No, we're not back.
Is that because of Corona?
Yeah, like Argentina's right now positioned as the #1 worst place to live in during the pandemic. So no, we don't have live events. We don't have any kind of events.
Okay. But maybe if they've got any virtual events or a group, you can join it. And I've done that with a few of them, and you just sort of sit quietly on the background and see what's going on.
I'll be wearing my Crypto Curry Club t-shirt. Like make sure if there's any other infiltrates, they'll know me. I'll know them. Okay, I'm just gonna sort by posts quickly just to see what I can find. But by the way, Speaking of live events, you guys are hosting a live event pretty soon, right? About crypto crime.
Well, yes, except we were meant to be out of lockdown a week
Are you
ago.
back to it?
Well, I think we're going to go back to lockdown. The numbers are getting worse. Our beloved and wise and infinitely infallible leader wanted to leave all borders open, including to India, because he wanted to go on holiday there. And this was when India was in the peak of pandemic. So without wanting to get into politics, we went from being a country with relatively low numbers to a country where it's getting worse every day again. So, either we'll go back into lockdown or who knows what will happen, but numbers are getting worse. So they're not opening us up again. So we're sort of in lockdown limbo at the moment. So that event, yes, we are meant to be having an in-person event about crypto crime, and just waiting to see what will actually, I think, happen with that due to lockdown restrictions.
I mean, I didn't look too much into it, but it looks like you're having an expert on crypto
Yes,
crime,
we've
and
got
he's going to be
someone from
telling you some
the
stories,
Met
right?
Police. So the Met Police, the detective who deals with a lot of the crypto crime and tracks down some of these. He's a very, very interesting guy, and got some incredible stories and experience. So
how acquainted is the police with these kind of scams, or what do they know? Like, can you give us a teaser here?
yeah, so well, they're you talk to them, they know a lot. They seem to know more than the regulators. They know a lot. They're smart. They're active. They're actively on top of sort of trying to track down the worst of it. And what's really interesting about them, they're also keen to learn more, to learn from the community. What are the latest hacks, crime, scams, and stuff? And they've come to us with some of the most incredible ideas and all of that. So they are on it, and they're smart, which is good. I think the only problem with the police in the UK, which is no fault of their own, is that they're just very under-resourced. There's not enough of them. There's been so many budget cuts that where maybe once upon a time there were more police people. Now there's, I think, maybe not enough. So they have to prioritize certain things. But yeah, no, I was quite impressed.
Well, one thing, like going back to like the LinkedIn search that I was doing, one thing that stood up to me is like, you're right, man. Like there is like 40% OneCoin is a scam, 10% Eric Stanford talking about OneCoin. I reckon it's because I'm friends with you on LinkedIn.
There's going to be someone from OneCoin after me soon.
That's what I was telling Evan Ratliff, man. Like your name is forever associated with this drug dealer. Like now, forever you're the OneCoin girl as well.
Oh well.
And the other 50% is people actively promoting OneCoin. Like in 2021, who knew?
Yeah. Still, there's a lot still around the world.
Yeah, and like the tale is that Dr. Aisha went on to like have plastic surgery, buy on fake passports, and go live of her millions, right?
I mean, it doesn't seem to be known what happened to her. Maybe law enforcement know. I certainly don't know. It doesn't seem to be known. I think what's come out now is that she potentially escaped with billions of dollars worth of stolen money. And it's known that she also liked plastic surgery, that she's highly intelligent and can speak multiple languages fluently. So it's one story is that she's had enough plastic surgery, and there are countries in the world where if you've got enough money, where you can buy, I guess enough protection and enough privacy to sort of keep going. That's one line of thought. It's quite possible. She's highly smart, highly connected, and got a lot of money behind her. And if you don't mind going under the knife to change your appearance, and that's possible. And then the other line of thought, which to me is perhaps more likely, it's now known or at least suspected that there were ties with organized crime, with mafias, with some really sort of hard and sort of criminal groups with the OneCoin scam. And certainly that looks how they managed to sort of get around and get so big and deal with all of their money and so forth. So I think it's perhaps more likely, this is, Ruja, if she were caught, there's no chance the US authorities would ever let her out of prison. So she would be in prison for life. She probably wouldn't have a very fun time of it. And she knows an awful lot. Obviously, she's a founder of it. So she would know who the organized crime are, who the, mafia, who, whatever it is, what even, what governments potentially have been caught up in this. She would know all of these things. So if you're facing, almost guaranteed life in prison, and there's options where you can talk and you can hand over certain organized crime gangs to the law enforcement or whatever, I think that there's practically the risk or the chance, however you want to see it, that she would take that. So I my thought, and again, without knowing an enormous amount about this, is that is perhaps more likely that if you've got these organized sort of crime gangs, they would be motivated to get rid of her because she knows too much, and there's a risk that she might sort of reveal who they are and reveal how they operate and so forth. So I would imagine there's probably more incentive for the sort of the criminals and whatever mafia groups that she worked with and that OneCoin had worked with to get rid of her because she knows too much. But I have no idea what actually
that's something that
has happened.
That's something that I didn't think about. I was looking a bit deeper into the Jeffrey Epstein rabbit hole this week, just for unrelated, causes.
Oh, right, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like, more people than we think have an incentive to try to take these people away from the picture, right? Like, It's not only law enforcement, and it's not only the direct associates. There are a lot of people that are like tangentially related that also would want these people to not speak, or to be out of the public eye.
Yeah.
Erica, I take your book and I look at the very last chapter, which is, albeit I think, the shortest one in the book. And this is a place where you try and paint a picture that not everything in crypto is bad. Like, there's a lot of legitimacy. There's a lot of potential in the technology. And when I take a book like this, I mean, it's very factual. I don't think there's much opinion in your book. It's more a collection of facts, and it's very...
I like to think there's little snippets of opinion creeping through in sort of written in a dry way. Maybe it's written so dry that it doesn't show as opinion clearly, unless people know me quite well.
Or maybe I'm biased in the same ways as you, and I don't think them. I mean, being members of the crypto community, we all have our own skewness. But yeah, like, it's in general very factual. Like, it's well researched, it's factual, and you would think that this is a kind of book that would be very friendly for a regulator that wants to get informed, right? It's the right format, it's entertaining, it's a bit of a page turner.
Maybe
I mean, the regulators I know, and the ones I've spoken to, this is the sort of materials that they look for. They look for something that's entertaining, that's very well sourced, that doesn't have too much opinion.
I hadn't thought about that angle. Okay.
Yeah, I saw it the minute I started reading the book. I knew this was gonna. I sent it to a regulator that I know.
Seriously, did they buy it?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I sent them the link.
Is it out in Spanish in Argentina, or is it only in English so far?
I just saw it in English.
Okay, maybe Spanish next. We'll see.
Yeah, I didn't do too much research because you sent me a unedited version. So yeah. Anyways, this is very likely to inform policy, I think, at some point, at whatever level, however big this gets. So in this very last chapter, you let us see that there's potential, that there's futures, that there's legitimacy, as I was saying, and you let and this was a bit of opinion that I think I could see through. You seem to think that CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, coins, are a positive thing for the crypto environment, which is no. I feel like you were letting that go.
That wouldn't be my opinion. I think, I mean, just for example, I've spent some time in China, and you look at sort of the Chinese project, the Chinese DCP, their national sort of digital currency project, and you see how much control it gives to the government, and they can literally use it to stop payments to people, to block people's wallets, to stop all transactions, to take away anything resembling freedom. Because the minute you've got payments can only be made via this one digital wallet, and then it's synced to, that's the only way you can make payments. If you want to book a train, if you want to do anything, that is synced to that wallet. So they've already got it live in China, that people who don't do what the government wants, they might be the wrong ethnic community, they might vote the wrong way, they might associate with the wrong people, they might whatever.
Wrong religion as well.
If people, wrong religion, all things that shouldn't affect your ability to be able to book a train ticket, or to to leave your home, or to get your kids into schools and so forth. And because it's all synced to this one digital wallet, they can just block everything. And you've already got people who, because of whatever they've done that isn't in agreement with the Chinese government, and as you say, it might literally be their religion or whatever, that they can't do anything, pretty much. It takes away all their freedoms. And you hear these sort of quotes and these reports that the aim is basically to take away all ability to move for people that don't do what the sort of the government party want. I find that really scary. And you've got governments wanting to launch these digital currencies, and you can see benefits to them. If you look at physical cash, specifically sort of central bank run digital cash. I mean, you've got one problem with fiat money, that governments have a tendency to print money and to print more and more, and to get inflation. Exactly what that is in Argentina. But there's plenty of other countries around the world that are going to be learning that lesson. If they haven't already, they're going to be learning that lesson very soon. And also you've got the problem of fraud with cash. If you've got a physical note, how do you know if it's real or not? And often that can be really hard to tell. And then you've got, if you want to sell drugs or whatever, the easiest way to do that is for passing over, swap physical drugs for physical cash. Who will ever know? So, there are benefits to sort of digitizing money, but then you've got all of the risks, I would say, that go with it. And my worry about CBDCs, and yes, I think for, stable coins, I think is different. I think stable coins have some real use cases, for international payments, to get rid of the remittance companies. Hopefully, that they get rid of remittance companies, because remittance companies are absolutely barbaric and charge enormous amounts to the poorest people around the world. And stable coins will facilitate microtransactions and payments in small amounts and payments around the world without having these huge costs. But CBDCs, my worry would be, you're only ever one election away, or one sort of scenario away from having a complete psycho in charge. I mean, without wanting to get into politics, but one can name certain Western countries where we've got absolute buffoons in charge, making absolute disastrous. That's not the worst of it, but you're only ever one election away from something. And what would worry me about CBDCs is that if that gets imposed, then that is sort of standard, and then it only needs to change a few things for governments to have that much more power over people. So even if a CBDC is brought in by a country that means well, and that has good intentions and that goes about it in a good way, once that is there, if the next leader is, I don't know, extreme right or whatever that is, then things can start to change, to really take away any freedom from people.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, in your book, I kind of felt like it was a pro CBDC's argument. I reckon I just read it the wrong way, and it was a pro stablecoin argument in there.
Yeah, I think in stablecoins I can see much use case. I'm struggling to remember where in the book I actually even include that. I thankfully haven't had to read it for a while. I read it so often when I was writing it.
It's hard, man. I just finished editing this 55 pages ebook, just that we're writing to also to help inform institutions that want to purchase cryptocurrency.
Mhm.
I reckon I'd put a link to that one in the description here if anyone's interested in checking that one out. And at some point you just forget what you wrote because it's like you're so immersed in your own research and so immersed in everything that you have to do. I mean, completely get it. I mean, and well, I think it's a good point to start closing this interview. Since you hadn't considered that possibility of this book potentially informing regulation, I would, yeah, I want to know, how would you feel if that ever happens?
I mean, I think, good. If good comes out of it, great. I think, regulatory wise, what I see as being sort of the problem, and not necessarily that this is sort of regulators' fault, it is that at the moment you've got, because crypto hasn't been regulated, and you've got some of the good companies wanting to be regulated, and the regulatory process is not sort of being there and being fast enough. You've got a lot of the sort of the good crypto companies that they're sort of forcing to go through all of these loopholes and then really making it slow and hard for them to get regulated. So you've got companies with good intentions that aren't being regulated. And the problem I would see is, I mean, this is just purely from a perspective of all I've seen for the last year is the scam side of it. So, slightly mind is leaning that way. But, you constantly hear about these scams that are making all of these claims, scams saying, we've got this partnership, we've got this customer, we've got this, we've got that, whatever, we're regulated by so and so. And if you had a thing whereby if the companies that had sort of good intentions could even have a sort of a blue tick of approval to differentiate themselves from the scams, then I think it would be harder for the scams to scam people. But at the moment, there's no way that the good companies can sort of prove that they're not a scam. And at the moment, it's really, really easy for scams to make out that they're good, and then people fall for them, and then lots of sort of people innocently lose money. So, if I guess, one wish of the regulatory side is, they're trying to do all sorts of things like protect from anti-money laundering and make sure all sort of compliance and everything is in order, and that's all good. But it means that all of the scams are able to say whatever they want and basically get away with it fearlessly.
Right.
But I'm not, I'm not a regulator. Thank God I'm not a regulator. I think that would be the most incredibly stressful job. And, especially in the UK, they're dealing with lockdown and corona and the absolute disaster that was Brexit. So that they've got a lot on their plate.
You're right. Like in the crypto community in general, we seem to think that regulators are 100% all of the time working to destroy crypto, and yeah, like most likely they have other things going on.
I don't think it's that by any definition of the word. I think they've got a tough job because traditional finance is anti-crypto, and the problem is if they do anything that they do, they will be accused somehow. And if they do something, like say a crypto company is good and then it turns out to be bad or a scam or whatever, then they have a problem. So, I don't think it's an easy job. And the reality is it's a new phase. And the problem in crypto, there are so many scams and there's so many problems with it, which will in time go away. But I think it's a tough job. But by sort of not regulating the companies that, where the intentions are good, I think that's giving the scams the opportunity to get away with basically whatever they want.
And well, since we're wrapping up, and I think we covered quite a bit about OneCoin in particular, which let me see if I get you right. Was OneCoin your favorite one to write about and research? I got that feeling.
Well, do you know, it was actually the hardest to write. I found it really, really hard to write because there was the most material about OneCoin. There was the most research about OneCoin. I was lucky I got the chance to speak to Jamie. I listened to the podcast, like I've forgotten how many times, but several times. There's so much research about OneCoin, and then to try and distill it into a chapter that was a length whereby the publisher wouldn't tell me to go back and make it shorter was really, really hard. So No, I think the most interesting one to read about and research about was probably either the Quadriga one, where you've got the guy who sort of either faked his own death or died, unfortunately, depending on what side of the story you want to believe. Or there's one called Bit Club Network, where it was this sort of Ponzi scheme, but about crypto mining. And, I found that was very interesting, sort of how just reading about that. So,
Which side of the story are you more inclined to believe in Quadriga?
Let's be diplomatic. I have never
Let's not be diplomatic.
Okay, so the diplomatic answer would be I've never met a single person in the crypto community who believes he died. Not a single one. I've spoken to a lot of people on it. Literally never met a single person who believes he died. I think it's now been proven to have been a scam from the start, and there's all of these claims that he was taking money out. There's people who witnessed sort of physical loads and tens of thousands at a time of banknotes being taken out. If he died, it's all very suspicious and it's all very bad luck. If he didn't die, he managed to get a lot of money out. And same with Rouge. There's places in the world where I'm sure you can sort of live relatively quietly if you've got enough money to pay for things. Look, who knows? I think the reality for that one, almost it doesn't matter, because the damage is done. It was a really trusted exchange. It was sort of what was Canada's largest exchange. A lot of people lost a lot of money, and they're realistically not going to get their money back. So, either way, I think for the people that have lost their money, it probably doesn't really make a difference.
I think in the book, The Black Swan, Nassim Taleb makes a point that basically every plane that crashes makes every next plane safer. And I think that would apply with crypto exchanges, right? Yeah. Every time something like this happens, it sort of informs the founders or the people behind it, other exchanges, that they should be careful with certain things. Do you think we're likely to see a next Quadriga, or is it just going to be coming out of the blue?
We've already seen it. We saw it just a couple of months ago. There was that Turkish exchange. I forgot the name of it, but it was a Turkish exchange where they lured people, saying, I think it was that you could get Dogecoin cheaper. And they did basically exactly the same thing. They lured people to put their money onto the exchange. And, with crypto exchanges, if you want to store crypto securely, there are institutional grade custody solutions that mean that one can store, that exchanges can store crypto securely if they want to. But they did exactly the same thing. Instead of storing crypto securely in sort of people's individual wallets, they got $2.2 billion worth of people's crypto into one centralized wallet, and then the founder exit scammed. Basically exactly the same thing, and that was only a couple of months ago, but with $2.2 billion. And then it's still happening. That's with exchanges, and a few people have said that exchanges are the easiest way to scam people in crypto, because it's just such an easy way to accumulate crypto and then run. But it happened only last week. There was another exit, well, maybe it was an exit scam. They're claiming that they were hacked, who knows. But two African brothers either escaped or lost $3.6 billion worth of their users' crypto. So it's still happening.
And well, yeah, like the best advice that you can give everyone is not your keys, not your Bitcoin, right? Like that old piece of advice that we all seem to forget all the time. What else would you advise, since it seems like, like this book is very much focused towards the retail investor that hopefully doesn't want to get scammed?
I mean, I think that there's two sides of it. There's people who sort of fall for the traditional scams where they're offering, send us your money and we'll send you back double, or invest in this and you'll get X% returns or whatever. So you've got sort of the traditional scams where people fall for them. And I think with those, regards to those, I think, you know, the lessons are, if something seems to be too good to be true, it probably is. If they make any promises, if they make any claims like that you'll get guaranteed percent returns or whatever, probably run a million miles. You know, if they're asking you to send your money, just really do a lot of research into who's behind it, what's behind it. Can you trust the person? Do you know the company? And, you know, if there's any doubts, I'd you know, personally say run a million miles. So there's that. But then the other sort of side of the problem is how crypto is stored, and people trust exchanges, people trust wallets, and, you know, either those exchanges are then hacked, or it's the founders that sort of do the hacking. It's the founders that sort of run away with the money. And so what the other bit of advice is, if anyone's got crypto, there are exchanges that are, you know, larger, you know, now in the state publicly listed, where, you know, that they employ what is seen as better security practices, where they've got practices about how they safeguard crypto, or insurance, or sort of custody practices, where they're trying to do what they can to make it safer to hold crypto, and also wallets. But then you've got other exchanges where it seems that their only intention is to accumulate enough of people's crypto before they exit scam, or where they just don't take any security measures and just get hacked, or are vulnerable to hacks. So I think, you know, if one has crypto, then the other thing is do an awful lot of research before trusting your crypto to where it's stored. Because, you know, by sending your crypto somewhere, it's exactly what you said. It's if you don't have it on you, i.e. in your own sort of hard wallet or something, if you don't have it, then you're effectively trusting someone else with it. And just by sending it to an exchange, it might be easier, but doesn't mean that it's by any definition of the word safe.
And you would also place a lot of the fault on all of these in the fact that the non-custodial solutions of the past were pretty rough, whereas the custodial solutions were pretty easy to operate. And I think that's changing gradually, isn't it? I
mean, I think one of the realities in crypto is that the user experience has traditionally been horrendous. And you know, I think there's an interesting trend. If you look at sort of traditional high street banks, the user experience of those is now, I would say, equally as bad as anything in the worst of crypto. I think that's fair. And the user experience in crypto is getting better, and you've now got wallets that are actively trying to make the user experience, you know, easy. And you know, there are new solutions coming about where, you know, it will be easier, and to store crypto, to buy it, to send it, to do all of these things, it'll be easier and it'll be safer. So that's a work in progress. Can one blame that? Partly, but I you know, I think also if one really wants to get into crypto, it is possible now to do a lot of research, and to, you know, ask around, and to research who's behind things, and to at least do more to protect oneself from sending crypto to a totally bad actor.
You know, funnily, I live with a UX researcher, and I guess I'm too used to the old ways where, like you said, all the user experiences were horrendous. And every time I would show her something like, hey, look how this nice it looks, crypto's getting better.
Right.
And she's like, that looks like
horrible.
shit.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be, I mean, until crypto is as easy as sending a WhatsApp message or whatever, then, you know, I think that's when it will just be mainstream. And I think, you know, I think we'll see that, because there's so many more, you know, intelligent people, smart people in UX moving to work in the crypto companies. So I think we'll see that in time.
And I mean, Facebook's coming, right? So they're probably bringing like a big arsenal of new, properly researched UX tools.
Yeah, I mean, with the DM, it will be very interesting to see what happens with that.
All right, Erica. Well, I don't want to hold you up any longer. Would you have anything else that you'd like to say to the audience apart from, well, buy the book? You're going to find the description here in the...
Please buy the book. Yeah, buy the book. You know, I think buy the book. Hopefully you'll learn some things. Be great. And I think if there's anything that looks too good or slightly dodgy, if there's any doubt whatsoever, which I think is worth to have in probably 90% of all crypto-related things, then, you know, better to just run away and not get sort of caught up in the FOMO than take any risks.
Add that to that, because I find if it seems too good to be true, it probably isn't. It sort of like clashes with the main thesis of DeFi. That's like actually too good to be true. So if it seems too good to be true, at the very least, do your research and figure out how it gets to be that good. Like no one's gonna be doubling your money for free, but like if it's offering substantially better things at your bank, at least figure out how they're managing to do it, and you'll get far in life. Erica, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you, Carlos.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.